SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation. SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
Surf Excel නම් භාගයයි මාසයකට වඩා රිදි සෝතයි. Tonight, closing thoughts. The central bank governor announces premature retirement and expresses regret over Sri Lanka's continued developing nation status.
We must be ashamed about ourselves for having continued even today to call ourselves a development. I have realized that our society or our system of party politics does not have systemic commitment for this work.
Better safe than sorry. Authorities opt for an extension of the lockdown up to the 21st of this month as an additional precaution. Almost there, Sri Lanka's fully vaccinated population surpasses the 10 million milestone. Survival of the fittest. The Delta variant outperforms all COVID-19 variants to become the ultimate dominator.
We found out that 95.8% of the PCR positivity is due to Delta variant in Sri Lanka.
All this and much more coming up on this Friday, the 10th of September 2021.
දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයිෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වලකයි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando in your top stories for tonight. Weeks of rumours circulating over a major change at the Central Bank of Sri Lanka were proven to be true today with the sudden announcement of the retirement of Governor Professor W.D. Lakshman. The Central Bank Governor held a media briefing this afternoon to make the announcement where he revealed some level of pushback against his plans to implement his long-held beliefs in alternative political economic policies. In addition, Professor Lakshman also rubbished reports that he is tipped to take on the position as Sri Lanka's alternative executive director at the IMF in Washington, D.C., saying that although he was offered the job, he declined on principle.
Central Bank Governor Professor W.D. Lakshman held a media briefing this afternoon where days of speculation on his future at the helm of Sri Lanka's apex financial body were finally put to rest. In the past 2 weeks or so, reports had been emerging of a possible switching of roles by State Minister of Money, Capital Markets and State Enterprise Reforms Ajit Niwad Cabral, whereby he would resign his parliamentary seat for a second shot as Central Bank Governor. Announcing his retirement today, which will come into effect on Tuesday the 14th of this month, an unwavering Professor Lakshman stated that despite his strong convictions in his long-held political economic policies, opposition to alternative methods from career central bankers made his job all the more difficult.
I have assumed duties as Governor, Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and spent nearly 2 years in that position. There is a political economy ideology which I believe and continue to believe to be correct. This has conscientiously guided my teaching in 45 years of my university academic life. I realize that only a minority of economists nowadays among us subscribe to these political economic perspectives. Among the large numbers of educated professionals in the central bank also, conditions are not any different. I must mention here, obviously not with any intention of hurting the feelings of anybody, that getting things done according to my policy perspective was not indeed an easy task. My intention and plan was to tender my resignation papers on my 80th birthday coming next month. The unpleasant events over the last week or 10 days have shortened my intended service period by about 6 weeks. I am addressing you now to inform you that I am planning to retire after Tuesday, 14th September.
Further addressing previous media speculation of his intention to accept a position at the International Monetary Fund, which has been sort of a tradition for many a retiring central banker in Sri Lanka, Professor Lakshman displayed a sense of aversion to following along similar lines.
I have been offered the position of Sri Lanka's alternative executive director at the International Monetary Fund in Washington for 1 year when I leave this position. An offer which is extremely attractive in terms of remunerations and other conditions. I have declined this attractive offer as this is against principles I cherish. I eagerly look for the leisure which I will get after this retirement to be usefully spent on academic writing, which has been postponed many occasions.
In addition, the central bank governor used the opportunity to express his displeasure at Sri Lanka's continued stagnation as a developing country, which he blamed on a society and a political system that seemed satisfied in short-term gains than committing to long-term economic plans.
At the time we studied, that must have been about 50, 60 years ago, we referred to our country as an undeveloped or a developing country. And we must be ashamed about ourselves for having to continue even today to call ourselves a developing. What I wanted was to become an active partner in the effort being taken to move out of this developing state. But over nearly the last 2 years, I have realized that our society or our system of party politics does not have systemic commitment for this object. Therefore, there is particularly the issue of the society not being able to agree on a clear policy framework and to stick to it for a long enough period of time. This is why we lag behind. When many countries after us are one after the other, overtaking us in the race to achieve development.
Further, responding to questions about his pension benefits, which had been alluded to in the media in the past 2 weeks or so, Professor Lakshman revealed that the decision to re-implement the pension scheme for central bank governors was one taken by the Monetary Board and that he has no objection to accepting it if he is found eligible.
This has come up, I don't know, unnecessarily in the newspapers. There was a system like this in the central bank. For some reason, it was stopped in a particular year. And after that, there were inquiries and requests and all that to reinitiate that pension program. Now, the Monetary Board has considered this and has taken a decision. So this decision, let that decision be implemented. If that decision is being implemented, then if I am found to be eligible, they might pay me. I don't mind accepting it because I am not already a pensioner as some of the newspapers alluded to.
The island-wide quarantine curfew will now be effective until the 21st. An extension to the prevailing curfew was largely expected, with several health organizations calling for a perpetuation. However, all economic centers have been given the green light for wholesale trade. Health Ministry, meanwhile, says that any recommendations made by the health sector on the COVID combat measures aim to preserve a balance between health and economic requirements. An island-wide quarantine curfew was imposed on the 20th of last month for a period of 10 days in order to curb the rampant spread of the Delta variant of the novel coronavirus. However, with not much improvement in the prevailing situation, authorities decided to extend the curfew a little further until the 6th of this month, which then saw a further extension until the 13th. Though there seems to be a decline in daily caseloads over the past weeks, some health organizations wanted yet another extension to the curfew, with the 18th of this month mentioned. In this backdrop, the Special Committee on COVID-19 Control convened under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa this morning to deliberate on the matter. During the meeting, an extension was decided until 4 a.m. on Tuesday the 21st. Issuing a video statement, Chief of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19 Outbreak, Army Commander General Shavendra Silva elaborated on the curfew extension. The NOCPCO chief said that the President called for a report on the possibility of reopening the country after the 21st of this month, including measures as well as restrictions to be implemented if the country is to be reopened. He added that despite the curfew period, all economic centres of the country will be kept open for wholesale trade, with the exception of Poya days. Also weighing in on the matter, Deputy Director of Education and Research at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hemanta Herath, highlighted that balance is key when making recommendations to reinforce or relax a lockdown.
අපි අපේ පැත්තෙන් අපි සෑම විටම දෙන්නේ මේ රටේ සමාජික සහ ආර්ථික ක්‍රියාවලිය අඩපණ නොවන මට්ටමින් කොවිඩ් රෝගය බෝ වෙන්න තියෙන ඉඩකඩත් අවම කරගනිමින් සමතුලිතතාවය රැකගනිමින් මේ රටේ ක්‍රියාවලියන් ඒ ආකාරයෙන් පවත්වාගෙන යාමට තමයි අවශ්‍ය කරන තත්ත්වය ගොඩනගන්න සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ. මෙහිදී අපි එක පැත්තකින් රට වසීමට තියෙන සීමාවන් ගොඩනගන ගමන් අනිත් පැත්තට යම් යම් ස්ථානවල සමහර ආර්ථික කටයුතු වලට ඉඩකඩ ලබා දෙමින් තමයි මේ මොහොත දක්වාත් යම් යම් දේවල් සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ. මේක ඒ සමතුලිතතාවයේ ආරක්ෂා වෙන පරිදි ඉදිරියටත් ඒක එක්ක දීර්ඝ කරાવી නැත්නම් කෙටි කරાવી එහෙමත් නැත්නම් ලිහිල් කළත් ඒක පියවරෙන් පියවර සිද්ධ වේවි. ඒ වාගේ පිට මේ පවතින තත්ත්වයේ අනුව රජය මගින් තීරණයක් ගනී.
There was official confirmation today that the Delta has become the dominant COVID-19 variant in the island. A study has shown that the Delta variant is responsible for over 95% of the COVID cases confirmed in the island at present. The daily caseload has been on the decline in recent days, but health experts view it's best to reserve judgment on the situation for now. The Delta variant of COVID-19 was first detected in Sri Lanka last April from a quarantine facility. Fast forward to June, the variant was found from a sample randomly collected for testing from the community. Given the sharp spike in new daily cases around that time led to suspicions that the high cases may be the Delta variant's doing. The suspicions were reasonable, especially with the World Health Organization cautioning countries at every turn that Delta is becoming the dominant variant across the globe. If there were any doubters of the theory, today they were served proof. A study conducted by the University of Sri Javardhanapura has revealed that the Delta variant is involved in over 95% of COVID cases confirmed in Sri Lanka at present.
As at last week, we did not have any island-wide data or information about the prevalence of Delta variant in the whole Sri Lanka. We already knew that it was almost 100% in Colombo, but the rest of the island we were not aware of the situation with regard to Delta spread. So we carried out a special investigation during the past 1 week. Based on that, we have received 881 samples, and out of them only 618 were suitable for PCR analysis, and we found out that 95.8% of the PCR positivity is due to Delta variant in Sri Lanka.
Dr. Jeevandara also gave a provincial breakdown on the prevalence of the Delta variant.
If we go for a province-wise breakdown, in Colombo it's 100%. Out of 130 samples, all 130 samples came as Delta. And in Central Province, we did not receive samples from Matale and Kandy, but we received samples only from Nuwara. Out of 29 samples, 27 were due to Delta infection, and there were 2 cases due to Alpha variant. Southern Province also, we received 64 samples. Out of that, 63 were Delta, and we observed 1 Alpha infection. And Northern Province also, we received 123 samples. Out of that, 113 were Delta and 10 were Alpha variant. In Eastern Province, we received 100 samples. Out of that, 94 were belonging to Delta variant, and we had 6 Alpha cases. Northwestern Province, it's 100% Delta, that is out of 22 samples. And North Central Province also, out of 60 samples, we saw 59 Delta infections. And Uva Province also, we received only 3 samples, and out of that, all 3 were Delta infections. Again, in Sabaragam Province, out of 87 samples, 81 were due to Delta infection.
At the peak of the third COVID wave, Sri Lanka's COVID fatalities even breached 200 a day. In and around that time, the daily caseload was around 4,500. Though there has been some improvement in that department of late, health experts believe it's too early to make a judgment.
සංඛ්‍යාත්මකව රෝගීන් අඩුවීමක් පැහැදිලිවම පෙන්눔 කරනවා. නමුත් මේක අපිට තවම ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් අවසානයේ සෑහීමකට පත් වෙන්න පුළුවන් තත්ත්වයක් නෙවෙයි තියෙන්නේ. තාම කල් වැඩි. මොකද මීට පෙර තිබිච්ච තත්ත්වයන් වලදී කවදාකවත් රෝගීන් 2500 ඉක්මවලා ගියේ නැහැ. එතකොට මේ තත්ත්වය තුල මේ තවමත් 3000ට යන්තම් අඩුවෙන් තියෙන තත්ත්වයේ සෑහීමකට පත් වෙන්න බෑ. ඒ වගේම තමයි අපේ මේ සමාජ සංචරණ සීමා ආදී පැනවුවාට තවමත් අපිට මේ මිය යන රෝගීන් ඉන්නේ මීට පෙර අර රෝගීන් සංඛ්‍යාව ඉතා අධිකව තිබුණු කාලයේ ඇඩ්මිට් කරපු රෝගීන්ගෙන් දීර්ඝ කාලීන සංකූලතා අරවමේවා තිබිලා ICU වල ඉඳලා අවසානයේ මිය යන අය තමයි බොහෝ දෙනෙක් තාමත් ඉන්නේ. ඒ නිසාම තව දින කිහිපයක් යනකල් බොහෝ වෙලාවට ඉහළ මට්ටමේ මරණ සංඛ්‍යාවක් අපිට දකින්නත් ඉඩ තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒක ඉහළ මට්ටමින් පැවැත්ම මේකේ සංචරණ සීමා පැවැත්වීමට වැඩක් වෙන්නේ නැහැයි කියන්න බෑ. අපි ඒ නිසා මේ ගැන සැලකිල්ලෙන් තමයි කටයුතු කළ යුත්තේ.
The reducing daily caseload is also easing the stress on the island's healthcare system.
In 224 treatment centers, there are 39,614 beds available for the treatment of COVID-19 patients, out of which 26,294 beds are occupied and 97 ICU beds are also being occupied at the moment.
He also mentioned yesterday's figures on the PCR and antigen tests conducted.
As reported yesterday, there had been 12,528 PCR tests reported, and during the same period, 3,951 rapid antigen tests also have been performed.
So far today, 2,832 COVID new cases have been confirmed in the island. Meanwhile, 1,512 patients were also given the all clear today to leave their treatment centres after full recovery. Sri Lanka has now fully vaccinated over 10 million people against COVID-19, which is roughly 47% of the island's total population. With there being around 3 million people awaiting the second dose, it was learnt that 120,000 second doses of the Russia-manufactured Sputnik vaccine will also reach the country next week. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today pointed out the need to continue the implementation of the mobile vaccination program in the island while encouraging those who are vaccine shy to get the jab. His views were delivered when the Special Committee on COVID-19 met today. During the meeting, it was also revealed that a further 120,000 second doses of the Sputnik V vaccine will arrive in the country within the next week. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka has reached a milestone on the vaccination front as the number of fully immunized people have now exceeded 10 million. According to the epidemiology unit, 10,211,537 people have received both doses of any vaccine approved for emergency use in Sri Lanka. This accounts for almost 47% of the country's total population. In the meantime, Senior Professor in Pediatrics Pujitha Wickramasinghe touched on the much talked about topic of vaccinating children.
ලෝක සෞඛ්‍ය සංවිධානයේ දැනට අනුමත කරලා තියෙන 12න් උඩට ෆයිසර් එන්නත පමණයි. අනිත් එන්නත් තාම අනුමත කරන්න බලන්නවත් නැත්තේ. ඒවා බලන්න තාම අවශ්‍ය දත්ත ටික ලබා දීලා නැහැ. මොකද ලෝකයේම බ්‍රිතාන්‍යයේ වුණත් පිළි අරගෙන තියෙන දෙයක් තමයි මේ ළමයින්ට දෙන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා වැඩිහිටිය සම්පූර්ණයෙන් ඉවර කරලා ඉන්න ඕනේ. අපි ඒ නිසා මගේ මෙව්ව එකත් සම්පූර්ණයෙන් අවුරුදු 18න් ඉහළයි අපි ප්‍රතිශක්තිකරණය කරලා ඉවර වෙනවා. දෙවෙනි ඩෝස් එකක් දුන්නා. ඒතකොට ඒ කියන්නේ අපි 70ක් 75ක් විතර අපේ ජනගහණයෙන් දීලා තියෙනවා. ඒතකොට ඊළඟට අවුරුදු 12ට අඩුවේ කාටවත් මේක දැනට කිසිම අනුමතයක් නැහැ. ඒතකොට 12 සිට 18 දක්වා එහෙම නැත්නම් අඩුමනේ 17 16 දක්වා වයස් කාණ්ඩ වලට අනිත් එන්නත් වලිනුත් කොහොමද තියෙන වාසිය කියන එක අපි දන්නේ නැහැ.
Big 3.
An expert in pediatrics warns that the disruptions brought on by the pandemic on children are having some profound adverse effects. He says that it has come to a stage that younger children are being startled at the mere sight of people since they've seen the faces of a few. What's more, in his view, the online education process too cannot be sustained, and reopening of schools as soon as possible is of paramount importance. Experts warn that with the education shifting to online methods with the onset of the pandemic, it has brought other problems. A common observation is that children have become addicted to computers and mobile phones.
ඒකෙන් අන්තිමට දැන් සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම දරුවන්ගේ ක්‍රියාකාරී දිනචර්යාව වෙනස් වෙලා තියෙනවා. හුඟක් වෙලාවට නිින්දට යන්නේ රෑ 10ට 11ට 12ට. උදේට හැරෙන්නේ 9ට 10ට. ඒතකොට මේකෙන් සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම දරුවන්ගේ විඩාවට පත්වීම තීව්‍ර කළා වැඩි කළා තියෙනවා. ඒතකොට ඒ භාවයේ තුලින් වෙලා තියෙන දෙයක් තමයි දරුවන්ට ඇත්තටම හරියාකාරව රෙස්ට් එකක් එන්නේ නැහැ. ඒතකොට ඒ තුලින් දරුවන්ගේ ප්‍රතිශක්ති පද්ධතිය හරියාකාරව ක්‍රියාවට නැංවෙන්නේ නැති වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඊළඟට උදේ පාන්දර පහුවෙලා නැගිට්ටහම එතනින් සම්පූර්ණ ආහාර වේලක් හුඟක් වෙලාට දරුවන්ට මග හැරෙනවා. පැය 14ක් 12කට වඩා කාලයක් ඔවුන් निराහාරව ඉන්නකොට අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම ඔවුන්ගේ ඇඟ දුර්වල වෙනවා.
But that's not all. There are other issues as well. With children largely confined to homes, the younger ones are having trouble associating with people.
නිවස තුලදී පුළුවන් තරම් සමාජගත වීම ඉතාමත්ම වැදගත් යම් කිසි ප්‍රමාණයකට ආරක්ෂා සහිත ආකාරයට. එතකොට අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම Tamanට පුළුවන් මට්ටමින් ගහක් ගොඩක් පෙන්නලා එළියට ගෙනහිල්ලා දරුවාට පුළුවන් තරම්. මොකද මම දකිනවා කුඩා දරුවෝ අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මිනිස්සු දැක්කහම දැන් බයේ අඬනවා. මොකද ඒගොල්ලෝ දැකලා තියෙන මිනිස් මූණවල් 4-5ක් පමණයි. ඒකම අනිත් පැත්තට දෙමව්පියන්ටත් මම කියන්න ඕනේ ඒකෙන් උඩ එන්න සඳහා ගොඩ එන්න සඳහා රූපවාහිනී යන්ත්‍රයක් දාලා ඒක ඉස්සරහා වාඩි කරලා තියන්නත් එපා. මොකද ඒක ඊට වඩා ලොකු හානියක් වෙනවා. ඉතින් මං හිතන්නේ මේ අවස්ථාව අර පරණ අපේ කතන්දර පොත් ටික පිහදලා අරගෙන ඒවා කියවන්න දරුවාත් එක්ක කතා කරන්න කතන්දරයක් කියන්නේ ඒ සඳහා යොදා ගැනීම ඉතාමත්ම වැදගත් වෙනවා.
Although some see online education is the way forward, there is another school of thought that the process should be better regulated, bringing better structure to the day of a child, as done by usual school hours. But Professor Pujitha Vikramasinghe believes that even then, the online process fails to deliver holistic education.
මේ දැන්ට කරන ඉගන්වන ක්‍රමවේදය ඉගෙන ගැනීමක් නෙමෙයි ඉගෙනවීමක් නේ කරන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ එක දිශාවකට කරුණු ටික යනවා. ගන්නන පුද්ගලයාට මේ දරුවෝ ටික ඉගෙන ගත්තද නැද්ද කියන එකවත් දන්නේ නැහැ. නමුත් මම මෙහෙම කතාවක් කරනවා නම් මට පේනවා අංග චලනයෙන් කොහොමද මේ පුද්ගලයාට අවබෝධ වුණාද නැද්ද කියන එක. ඊළඟට අපි දන්නවා විශේෂයෙන්ම දරුවන්ගේ දැනුමට වඩා ක්‍රියාකාරකම්. ඉතින් හුඟක් අය හිතනවා උසස් පෙළ සාමාන්‍ය පෙළ පන්තියට තමයි මේක බලපාන්නේ කියලා. නෑ. ඇත්තටම බලපාන්නේ ප්‍රාථමික අංශයට. මොකද ප්‍රාථමික අංශය සහ පෙර පාසල් වල මැටි අනන්න, පැන්සල අල්ලන්න, පාට කරන්න, ඊට දෙකක් මැද්දේ පාට කරන්න ඔය හැකියාවන් ටික අපි වර්ධනය කළේ නැත්නම් අපිට සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම හැකියාවන්ගේ නැති වෙච්ච කට්ටියක් එන්නේ. ඒතකොට පාසල පවත්වීම තුලින් හැකියාවන් අඳුරා ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. ඒ අඳුනා ගන්න බැරි වෙලා සමහරලාට මේ හැකියාවන් මොට වෙලා යන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට ඒ අලුත් දෙයක් ඔරිජිනැලිටි එන විදිහට හිතන්න පුළුවන් පරම්පරාවක් නැතුව යන්න පුළුවන්. රට විවෘත කළාද ඒ එක්කම පුළුවන් තරම් ඉක්මනින් අපි පාසල් විවෘත කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒකට සඳහා දැම්ම ඉඳලම මානසිකව සහ අනිත් යටිතල පහසුකම් ඔක්කොම පරිපූර්ණ කරගැනීම එක තමයි මම හිතන්නේ වැදගත් වෙන්නේ.
It was confirmed today that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa will attend the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. This year's session is set to open on the 14th of September in New York. The high-level general debate will later take place from the 21st to the 27th of September. This will be President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's first address to the United Nations General Assembly and also the first foreign conference he is attending outside Sri Lanka. The president is expected to hold bilateral talks with several heads of state on a number of areas including economy, education and agriculture during the visit. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa reached Italy this evening after leaving the island on a diplomatic visit to Bologna in Italy. He is scheduled to deliver the keynote address at the inaugural session of the G20 Interfaith Forum Italy 2021. The event is held at the University of Bologna, one of Europe's oldest seats of learning. The Premier is also expected to hold several high-level diplomatic meetings during his visit. Prime Minister Rajapaksa is accompanied by a delegation, including Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Pires. Welcome back in business news. Following the imposition of a cash margin deposit system for the importation of non-essential and non-urgent goods this week, Samagi Janabalawege parliamentarian Iran Wickramaratne called the move nonsensical today and warned that online education could be jeopardized by the inclusion of mobile phones and computers in the list. However, Central Bank Governor Professor W.D. Lakshman stated that goods that may still be deemed essential could be removed from the list if necessary.
Samagi Janabalawege parliamentarian Iran Wickramaratne called the central bank's recent circular imposing a cash margin deposit system for non-essential import goods a nonsensical policy that is not addressing the actual problem of a dollar shortage. He also stated that the new system cannot be implemented by commercial banks as they don't have the dollars to follow through with it, adding that online education will be compromised by the inclusion of mobile phones and computers in the list.
We heard the government make an announcement that there are things which are not essential goods. And if you're going to import those goods, that if you put 100% margin or a deposit, then you can open a letter of credit and actually get that stuff done. So I inquired from two banks. Both banks told me, sorry, that's not possible because we don't have the dollars. So I said, then what's the point in making the announcement that if you put 100% deposit, that you will be able to open a letter of credit? They said, no, that announcement announcement has been made, it just sends the cost of the product up. But the critical matter is this. They said that the central bank will not sell them dollars to actually pay when the letter of credit becomes due. So that's a big problem. The other thing is when you put a 100% deposit, it helps the big companies because they have the money to put the deposit. But small and medium enterprises will find it extremely difficult because they just don't have the savings to put the deposit. They work largely on credit lines. So this is an absolute nonsense. There's a dollar shortage. What is the government doing about it? And what is this list of non-essentials? Among these things like mobile phones, computers. Are these really non-essentials today? Today, we're keeping our kids at home. We're telling our children to learn online. How can they earn online if they don't have an instrument or a computer to earn online? What kind of nonsensical policies is this government really pursuing?
However, speaking at a media briefing today, Central Bank Governor Professor W.D. Lakshman said that the policy is not cast in stone, as any goods that may still be deemed essential could be removed from the list if necessary.
Our officials, economic research and various other departments have done a very careful study. It is after that process in the monetary board. This decision was taken and the circular issue. We still believe that the items that are mentioned in this are really inessential or non-urgent. If there are, of course, articles found in that list which will be of a different nature, essential and essential for consumption as well as for production, then of course those articles can be removed. So this has to be a changing kind of exercise, but the objective is to achieve the restraint on the trade deficit expansion. This is an instrument which the central bank has used to restrain imports on many occasions in the past. This is less harmful than complete or quota-wise reduction of imports because the volumes that are coming in are unlikely to be directly stopped. Only thing is, if somebody wants these commodities really, there might be some increase in prices.
Sri Lankan shares closed lower today, dragged down by losses in industrial and financial stocks. The CSE All Share Price Index closed down 1.35% at 8,865.30 points, shedding 4.84% for the week and snapping a three-week streak of gains. Rather, the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks meanwhile fell 1.36% or 45.92 points to close at 3,330.12. With that, here's Dimantha Mathi with today's stock market report.
Today we saw the market again reverting back to the negative territory. However, at the start of the day, we saw a bit of positivity in the market flowing in from yesterday, where we saw significant amount of buying interest as the market moved up 40 to 50 points in the index. And afterwards, selling pressure came back into the market. A lot of profit taking was seen on the, especially on the retail favorite counters, which have significantly moved up in value. And then with that, we were seeing a continuous downward slide until the end of the day, and with that we saw the market overall declining by around 121 points as the market fell below the 8,900 mark as well, so to end at 8,865 points.
The Sri Lankan rupee once again remained at around the 203 range against the US dollar today, according to the central bank's daily buying and selling rate. With that, let's take a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Have a good night.